Debate,
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Following my question that I asked on February 15th concerning the government's Plan B on the F-35s, I am still waiting for an answer. Of course, the debate has evolved in the House, and yet there remains a whole series of contradictions without answers. When we talk about contradictions, we're asking simple questions as to why there's no Plan B and when we'll get the planes. First of all, I'd like to say that the government has said from the beginning that we have to replace the aging CF-18s in 2022. We're fine with that. There's no problem there. They say they're too old to fly after 2020, and the costs would be astronomical. Furthermore, the government wants to make sure that the F-35s will be able to take over from the CF-18s, therefore not leaving our Canadian forces without a fighter jet. One of the criteria is that it has to be operational by 2020 based on what has been said. What we see with the F-35s, and we've seen this since 2010, is that the government expects to have an operational fleet for 2020, and yet we see the delays that have occurred over the last 2 years, and the government still hasn't changed the date of delivery. On April 11th, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence said that no contract would be signed before 2017-2018. I think that the delivery deadline seems a bit tricky there if they will only sign the contract in 2017 and 18, and yet we expect to have 65 operational planes that are suitable for the Canadian Forces needs by 2020. Furthermore, in the Committee of the Whole, my colleague asked if the government thought it would keep the CF-18s operational till 2025, and the Associate Minister of Defence has said, Madam Speaker, we are developing plans and various decisions will have to be made when we have more information. Work is underway. So my first question is as follows. When will the government get these planes, and when will we be able to take receipt of them? When will the Canadian Forces be able to have new fighter jets, and when will the CF-18s be retired? Another question that we don't have an answer to is how many planes, the cost of the F-35s. Since the beginning, the government, in fact, for months, the government has said that $9 million would be provided for the purchase. Now we're talking about the $9 billion amount that was frozen. The government is saying studies were done to determine that our Canadian forces needed 65 planes. Yesterday, my colleague asked if there could be confirmation with regard to the 65 F-35, and the minister said, we need fighter jets. So now we have no more figures from the government. The parliamentary budget officer said that 80 fighter jets was probably a reasonable number. So I would like to know how many fighter jets the government wants to purchase, how much it will cost, and if the $9 billion will remain the same envelope, how many planes will we be able to purchase with that amount of money? And I'd like to know if the government could give clearer information regarding these figures now. We don't know either where the money will go. We know that this program is not meeting traditional standards with regard to industrial benefits, regional benefits to the country. Normally when contracts are signed, this contract is included. So there are guarantees that are hypothetical. So I would like to know what the government's plan is in this regard. What will it do to ensure that our Canadian companies and employees will get benefits if it's not negotiated in the contract as such? And I'd like to know if they've begun negotiations with Lockheed Martin to ask for industrial benefits. So what can Canadian workers expect? I must interrupt the Honourable Member, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always a pleasure to rise in this House and talk to you and my honourable colleague who never stops being interested in this very important file for the future of the Canadian Forces, particularly when it comes to the Royal Air Force. And she's asking very relevant questions that we have to consider this file very seriously, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to respond to these questions as to when will we have the fighter jets to replace the CF-18s. It's impossible, Madam Speaker, and this is a very honest answer here. It's too early to say now. Why? Because we're still far from purchasing these jets to replace the CF-18s, because in fact we have a plan that has been mentioned many times in this House that will govern our actions for the months and years to come before, no matter what expenditure it is, will be made to purchase a plane to replace the CF-18s. We are being very prudent in this regard. We are extremely aware of how complex this file is, and we know how complex the development of high-tech planes is with 8 other partners, where development is not yet completed. Yes, there's a lot of success to date, but it's not yet complete. And no decision has yet been made, as all the honourable members of this House know full well, with regard to the successor to the CF-18s. And that is why, following the Auditor General's spring report, that we launched a new plan, a plan that is stronger, an expanded plan to govern our actions when it comes to replacing the CF-18s. The honourable member probably knows the points contained in the plan. There are 3 key out of 7 elements. First of all, there will be no decision without the cost, and not just the costs, cost estimates in general, but rather the life cycle costs, the full life cycle costs of the aircraft are known. And they will be presented to Parliament, not just presented to the House, but verified by an independent authority retained by a Treasury Board. This is part of our plan and our commitment, and we will keep that promise. Second, we will continue to compare. The various options for Canada. Of course, we're taking part in the F-35 development program. We have been doing so since 1997, for 15 years. Then, since the honourable member was a child, or perhaps she was already a member of the Canadian Forces, or perhaps before she had started that career. So 15 years is a long time. We have some experience, some expertise, but this does not mean, even today, that the F-35 is absolutely going to be Canada's choice. We have to follow the points in our plan before this decision is made, and we will compare the F-35s with the other options. A third thing, which is extremely important, is to make sure that these apply, or rather procurement process respects Canadian legislation with regard to military procurement. There is legislation in this regard. The Minister of Public Works. The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So if I understand correctly, before we weren't being told the truth and we were being given information that perhaps wasn't verified, and now at least perhaps we have evolved somewhat and we're being told the truth, but the truth is that we no longer have any answers. So I don't know if this is an evolution or not, and I would like to come back to a final question that I have, and that is which plane. In July 2010, the government announced the purchase of 65 F-35s. Until the beginning of this year, they said that only the F-35s were able to meet the operational requirements. We learned that for now, the F-35s don't respect all of those operational requirements, particularly with the 360-degree vision. I don't know if they'll be able to meet that requirement one day. So since then, the rhetoric has changed. The ministers say that no choice has yet been made, and yet we're in 2012. So I think that if the government wants to have an operational fleet by 2020, I hope that it is very seriously considering the possible choices. So I would like to know if the government has order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, we have not given up on any of the options, nor for the F-35 development program. This is a different program that will govern the replacement of the CF-18s. We know the cost of replacing the CF-18s. We've talked about it a lot in committee and here. We'll have to look at the options to replace the CF-18s. How many aircraft? We don't know yet. We have a budget. We will keep this budget as is, but really we'll have to verify the cost before giving any clear answers in this regard. And Madam Speaker, we mustn't say that the benefits for Canadian industry are hypothetical. I know that they are, to the Leader of the Opposition, who has denied that there were jobs in Montreal or in other regions of the country that had a connection with the F-35. These jobs are already real. We've invested more than 300 million. Order. This